love Fuzz. It's without a doubt my favorite guitar effect ever, more than anything else. This is a desert island effect for me, and over the past several years I've collected dozens of fuzz pedals. And I think over the past couple years I've become somewhat of a fuzz evangelist, trying to convince people in my comment sections and in my videos and friends of mine that the way of fuzz is important. I think this effect has had such an impact on guitar playing over the years. It has stood the test of time. It was one of the first guitar effects. Some of the first pedals ever made were fuzz pedals, and it's still being utilized today. But you can do way more with a fuzz than just crazy, spitty, making your amp sound like it's gonna explode type sounds. So in this episode of Gear Talk with Rhett, I'm gonna try and convince you why you need to have a fuzz pedal on your board. So before we go any further, let's talk briefly about fuzz circuits and what they actually do. Fuzz pedals are actually pretty simple circuits. There's not a lot going on, but there are a few key components here. First and foremost are the transistors. Now, a transistor is a small electrical component that we use as an amplifier inside the fuzz circuit, and we achieve the fuzz distortion, fuzz sound, by overloading those components. Now, there's two common types of transistors that are used in fuzzes most often: germanium and silicon. Now, more often than not, a germanium fuzz is going to be a little bit smoother in the top end. It's not going to be as bright and brittle and harsh as a silicon fuzz will be. Germanium, though, is known for being somewhat unreliable. It changes its sound based on things like temperature. That's why there's stories of players keeping their fuzz faces and other germanium type fuzzes in the freezer before a session, or not wanting to use them outside in hot gigs because it completely changes the sound of the fuzz. And that's one of the main differences between germanium and silicon. Silicon is much more stable. It is not affected by things like temperature change. Now, you can use other types of components than transistors to achieve a fuzz sound. You can build fuzzes with clipping diodes, for example, like the Mythos Golden Fleece, or you can use op amps. But essentially, all of these components are working effectively in the same way, which is to say that they are clipping your signal. They're distorting your signal, giving you the fuzz tone. Now, I have an entire section of my tone course devoted to fuzz, which you can check out down below. We go into a little bit more detail in that course. Now, fuzz circuits and overdrive and distortion circuits work in a similar way. You are clipping some kind of amplification device, a diode, a transistor, an op amp, and generally they just have a different response than many overdrives and distortions do, but there absolutely is a crossover. There are a lot of fuzz pedals that can get into overdrive territory, and a lot of overdrive and distortion pedals that can get into fuzz territory. So one of the main reasons I think you should have a fuzz on your board is you can use these as incredible tone shaping tools. They're not just for crazy distortion and high gain sounds. I mean, they're certainly great for that, but you can use a fuzz pedal to do things like fatten up clean tones. And that's something I love to do, especially on tracks. So here I've got one of my favorite fuzz pedals of all time. This is the Jexteles Buzz Tone. This is a germanium fuzz, and it's based off of the fuzz that Syd Barrett used on the early Pink Floyd sessions, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Now let me show you what I'm talking about. I've got my Esquire here going into the fuzz, and from the fuzz I'm going into my Hiwatt Custom 20 and then into Luna. And you can hear how I've got the fuzz set currently. It's pretty gainy. Now, believe it or not, we can use this fuzz to dial in a really fat, clean sound that's actually going to help your guitar cut through a mix better than it would on its own. So all I've got to do is find the sweet spot on my guitar's volume knob to where it starts to clean up a little bit, but there's still a little bit of drive, a little bit of saturation coming from the pedal. Now, this is one thing I always look for in a good fuzz pedal. How well does it clean up with my volume knob? Because you really have an infinite amount of tonal possibilities available with a fuzz. You kind of dial in your maximum amount of gain that you want and then use your volume knob to control how much gain is actually coming from the pedal. So to show you what I mean, I'm going to play a little lead line over a track that you might not think of a fuzz for, but this is the perfect sound for this kind of pedal. So there you could immediately hear the guitar cut through more. And yes, there was a little bit more gain coming from the pedal, but you could tell when I kicked it on the amount of gain that the pedal is set for that immediately cleaned up as soon as I rolled off the volume knob on this Esquire. Now you use a different fuzz with different transistors and a different tone circuit and you're going to get a slightly different effect. But this is something that you should absolutely try out in your own rig at home. Now there's more to a fuzz than just the type of transistors or op amps or clipping diodes in its circuit. And I think this is where people start to get a little confused and somewhat intimidated because the world of fuzz pedals is deep and vast and seemingly never ending. Bottom line is, if you're new to the world of fuzz, it can be really tough to decide what type of fuzz pedal to start off with. What should you go for? And I think this is the source for a lot of the animosity towards fuzz that I see, at least in my comment sections on videos I've done in the past. The important thing is to do your research. If you have a favorite player or a favorite type of sound, do a quick Google search and try and find what that player or what that band was known for using, and then try and find a fuzz pedal or circuit that fits under that category. And after a few years, if you're anything like me, you'll end up with a few dozen different fuzz pedals in your collection that you just can't seem to part ways with. Okay, so another great use for just about any fuzz pedal out there is to use it as a way to fatten up your rhythm sounds. This works especially well if you're playing in a band where you might be the only guitar player, or if you're recording a track where you have one guitar that you want to have a little extra weight to. You have maybe a riff or a rhythm part that you want to help just add some girth to. Fuzz pedals are great for this because they're adding a ton of harmonic distortion. There's so much extra harmonic information coming from the fuzz itself that it really adds a lot of weight to your sound. So for this example, I'm going to use the JHS 3 series fuzz, and I've just got my Novo here going into my Custom 20 again with a slightly broken up sort of rhythm sound. This is something that I would use for a lot of riffs or any kind of rhythm parts on like a rock track, for example. Sounds great, but listen to what happens when I kick on the fuzz. Now, it's especially apparent when you're playing in the key of E and you play this major third interval. In fact, this is one way I like to test fuzzes a lot to see how they respond and how they handle intervals, because not all fuzz circuits handle chords or intervals very well. So playing this interval here can give you a good idea of how that fuzz is going to handle chords. Now, you may hear that and think that's way too distorted. There's way too much fuzz. It sounds harsh and spitty, and you may not think that you would want to use that for your own sound. But listen to what happens when I put it in the context of a mix with drums and bass and possibly another guitar. Now, probably my favorite way to use just about any type of fuzz is as a lead tone. Fuzz is a great effect for this for a few different reasons. First of all, it adds sustain. Now, the way it's doing that is actually sort of like acting as a compressor. If you've ever used a compressor before your overdrives to get more sustain for your lead sounds or your single note runs, Fuzz is essentially doing the same thing. By clipping your signal, it's acting as a compressor. And depending on how you have the fuzz set and how you have your amp set and how they're interacting with one another, you can get singing violin-like sustain. Think Eric Johnson, think David Gilmour. I mean, the list goes on. And the second reason is, depending on how you have your fuzz set, it can help push the mid-range frequencies of your guitar. That's going to help you cut through the mix and get you that singing, smooth, violin-like solo tone. Now, for this example, I'm using the Royal Tone from BAE, and this is cool because it actually has its own mid circuit, a mid boost circuit, but I'm not actually going to use that for this example here. So I've got my amp set pretty much the way I've had it this whole video. Slightly broken up, but nothing too crazy. And you can hear the amount of sustain I've got going on right now. Not much at all. So listen to what the fuzz is adding. So you can see right off the bat, I'm getting loads more sustain than I was without the fuzz on. And it's also pushing that sort of upper mid-range bite that's going to help this guitar cut through. Now, there's one other thing that I like to do when I'm going for those really long, sustained sort of violin-like solos, and that's add some delay and reverb. Now, I've just added some tape delay and plate reverb to the tone, and you can hear the difference. So this tone I'm going to use slide for. Because the delay repeats and the reverb are so long, the trails are so long, it's not going to lend itself very well to super fast playing. It's more melodic lines. And so when you throw the slide into the equation, that added sustain from the fuzz, the mid-range kick from the fuzz, paired with the delay and the reverb are going to give you a really great singing lead sound. So that's why I love fuzz, and that's why I think every guitar player out there needs a fuzz on their pedal board. If you want more information on the pedals that I used in this video, those will all be linked in the description box down below. Some of those links are affiliate links, which means if you buy something through that, I will earn a small commission, which really helps me out in running this channel. So thank you. If you want more information on how to support the channel, you can check out my tone course down below. Check out the green room down below as well. I'm also working on a brand new video course, which is going to drop very soon on the Nashville Number System. So keep an eye out for that. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Rhett Shull, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, and check out my second channel, Backstage Journal, down below as well. I'm getting ready to launch season 3 of the Backstage Journal podcast there. I'm also doing weekly live streams over there as well. That's a lot of information to drop at the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. My name is Rhett Shull, and remember, there is no plan B.